Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gutshot Podcast. I'm your host, Shamsul, Sam. And with me, my partner, Syed Akbar.
Good morning.
Today, we are going to make a twist of things. We're going to talk foreign policy, Malaysian foreign policy, to be exact. In fact, sometimes I wonder whether we really do even have a foreign policy. So, without further ado, Syed, shall we kick it off?
Thank you.
Let's go with the first thought of that.
Yeah, today
What is our foreign policy?
Today we are slightly different topic. Malaysian foreign policy. What is Malaysian foreign policy? Many people may consider this a boring topic, but actually it is quite relevant. It's quite relevant to all of us. I always like to talk about things that are relevant to the everyday person, everybody, the entire country. But as you said, do we have a foreign policy? What is our foreign policy? Implying that maybe the foreign policy has got its own tangent, which may not be as relevant to the general public. Meaning that foreign policy may or may not entirely serve national interests. That could be the reason why you are asking the question, do we have a foreign policy? So maybe I can just give a bit of background of the history of our foreign policy, going back to from the time after Merdeka and all that.
Yeah, let's do that.
So there are certain constants in our foreign policy which have not changed since 1960s and so on. ASEAN plays a big role in our foreign policy ever since ASEAN was set up, I think, in the 70s. And then we had this thing that was during the time of the Vietnam War, when the Cold War was still at its peak, the Cold War between the West and communism mainly being USSR. So Russia, Soviet Union, and China. And at that time, suddenly we came up with this thing called ZOPFAN. I don't know whether you remember this acronym.
Yeah, I remember
Zone of
ZOPFAN.
Peace, Freedom, and Neutrality.
Yeah.
It was actually a bit hypocritical because we try to imply that ASEAN, our region, should be a zone of peace, freedom, and neutrality. It came up at a time when there was concern that nuclear weapons would be deployed or pass through our area. There was a fear that nuclear weapons could be either in transit, in passage, or stored in places here because there was a lot of competition between the Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union, China, and the Western Bloc. But as I said, this did not fool many people, especially in the Eastern Bloc, because, as you know, during the Vietnam War, Thailand was a base for American military operations against Vietnam. They had the largest American military airbase in the world, I think, in Thailand. I forget the name, Udon or something. And then, of course, the United States 7th Fleet was based in Subic Bay in the Philippines.
Yes.
So at that time, and then, of course, our because we are ex-British colony, Malaysia, Singapore, we have always been friendly towards the West. So suddenly to declare ourselves a zone of peace, freedom, and neutrality, when we already had such close ties to the US, to the West, I do not know how well it went down with the Eastern Bloc, but that was our policy at the time. So that policy stuck for a long time in ASEAN. It helped ASEAN at that time, a good thing. It helped ASEAN find its footing in the early phases of ASEAN, where we decided to stick together. So there were no conflicts between the ASEAN nations. And later, after the Vietnam War, 75, much later, Vietnam has joined ASEAN. So again, showing that we have no animosity, among ASEAN nations. We sort of mind our own business, and it has been quite helpful. But always in this kind of multilateral agencies, regional agencies, and also policies of the countries. There is a up and down and ebb and flow. Things change over time. So anyway, ASEAN and ZOPFAN were written in stone. It was part of our foreign policy, and it helped us. And then we also had later, as time passed, after the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the Islamic identity became prominent in foreign policy. Well, the Islamic identity became very prominent throughout the world after the 80s, after the Iranian Revolution. Everybody discovered their Islamic roots. Many countries, Islamic countries, and the OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, gained prominence at the time. And we were part of that because we are an Islamic country. We were part of that. And our foreign policies were also tilted, some would say skewed, towards Islamic countries. That also became another, it's always a given, one of the sort of cornerstones in our foreign policy making. We would always take the side of the Islamic countries in multilateral issues, in whatever that cropped up.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the mainstays in our foreign policies. But often we have to, so we sort of followed, we just the flow of what was happening around the world. So whether that really helped us in our national interests, that is debatable. Whether it really benefited us. We have always maintained cordial relations with, for example, Saudi Arabia, because, as you know, Saudi Arabia controls the quota for the pilgrimage every year. And they have used the pilgrimage quotas as a political tool against other countries. When they have, hostilities or problems with other countries in their neighborhood, like Iran, for example, they have restricted quotas of pilgrims from that country into Saudi Arabia. So because of that, they have this, they have a leverage. And we have respected that, or rather we have always respected that. But then again, we don't have any issues with Saudi Arabia. But nevertheless, we have always been careful to maintain good relations with Saudi Arabia, because the pilgrimage quotas can become a political issue in Malaysia, especially when you're looking at the Malay Muslim votes. If the pilgrimage quotas were reduced or in any way impacted, it will have serious repercussions on the local Muslim voters. So we have always maintained good relations with Saudi Arabia. So these are among the background to our foreign policy over the last decades, unchanging. There are also other things which are more specific, which were not as right or did not serve our interests as well. I think maybe we can discuss this as we go along.
Yeah. My thoughts are, I think, I guess when I think of foreign policy, especially for a trading nation like ours, what comes to my mind is very simple. The primacy of our foreign policy should be driven by economics, because it has to serve the population. And our population, even if you talk about, because you brought up the issue of, being put within the foundation of the OIC, or being fully supportive of any so-called Islamic interest or Muslim country interest, 37% of our population at very minimum that comes from our data are non-Muslims. So to put the primacy of so-called a majority of the a certain religious population, I think is not just hypocritical is not actually the word. It's actually self-serving towards political advantage more than anything, and using religion as a political tool rather than what should be driving our economic interest for the people. So that's my first thought listening to what you just said. To a certain extent, when I look at the differences between how a country like Singapore has executed their foreign policy, it's very clear how Singapore has actually managed its foreign affairs. Maybe you want to touch on that, Syed.
Yeah. Perhaps an easy way to determine what foreign policy should achieve is to look at who are your biggest trading partners. Who are your largest investors?
Yes.
Who are the countries which send the most tourists to your country and stuff like that? Of course, today, across all three categories, China is a big giant. But that does not mean that immediately we should all become Chinese. But nevertheless, to focus on economics and trade, as you say, we have to focus on things that benefit our economy. You mentioned Singapore. Singapore is unique because, well, Singapore is PAP, okay? Let's talk about PAP, the Political Action Party, which has ruled Singapore for the last, since 1965.
Okay, let's go there.
60 years.
Yeah.
They, from day one, their politics is admirable. They have focused on Singaporean national interests. What is good for Singapore's economy? What is good for Singapore's people? They've had their priorities very simply and very well thought out. They just prioritize what is best for the country, what is best for their people, and what is best for their country and what is best for their people ultimately became best for the survival, the fortunes of the Political Action Party.
Yeah.
The more they deliver to the Singaporean people, the more the foreign policies brought profit to their country, the more the people supported the political PAP, and they are in power until today. Like, the famous saying in the US, General Motors was the largest corporation in the world for a long time, bigger than the oil companies. And at that time, there was a saying and an adage, whatever is good for General Motors is good for America,
yeah.
Which is true because it was such a huge corporation.
Yeah.
With hundreds of thousands of workers and billions in revenues and production, and the supply chain was, a lot of it was entirely American at that time, before they moved things to Mexico and Canada. So whatever was good for General Motors was definitely good for the American economy. So that's the same approach the Singaporeans have taken. Whatever is good it has become, there has been a convergence, and whatever is good for the PAP, the People's Action Party, kan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, PAP, kan? It is good for Singapore and vice versa. So there is a convergence of interest between their policy making and what is good for the national interest and what is good for their own political survival. This is the part where I think our local boys have lost the plot a little bit, or more than a little bit, because not everything they do in foreign policy is in the national interest or serves our interest to the maximum. And very often politics comes into play. Politics means fishing for votes. I'll give you an example. We've had issues not too long ago. One of our deputy prime ministers, he got up and made a statement in public on TV that the Shias are kafir. He made a very blatant statement. And this was at a time where, after Saddam Hussein, where we, Malaysia, our oil company or companies were investing in Iran
Yeah.
and Iraq,
Yes,
and that part of the world.
Yeah.
And so a senior official, a government official in Iraq, Shia, Iraq is Shia majority, so it's run by the Shia people. So he took offense and he made a point. He said, this is a national leader of a country which is labeled the Shia people as kafir, and yet they are doing business here in our country. So that was some time ago. I do not know what happened to whatever business that they were doing at the time, whether it had
it has an impact actually.
So you see, these are the kind of things. Okay, why did that person make that statement? That was grandstanding to impress the local voters, to impress the local Malay Muslim voters, fishing for votes. So it was for the optics, for the soundbite, to impress the local voters, Muslim voters, and perhaps hoping for their vote. But at what cost? So you see, sometimes they make statements like, of course, there was not a foreign policy issue, but it did affect our relations with some of the countries in the Middle East. It also does reflect a mindset which does have an influence on how we do things outside the country. Just to go a little bit further on this, there still is a war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. So before the previous government, 5 governments ago, the Barisan National Government lost the elections in 2018. We actually sent our military assets to Saudi Arabia to help them in the war against Yemen. I think we sent some of our aircraft, our transport aircraft. They flew to Saudi Arabia and they were helping out in logistics. I don't know exactly what, but they were there. Why? Because the conflict in Yemen was against the Shias. And Saudi Arabia is considered Sunni, Wahhabi Sunni. So again, we took sides. That conflict has got absolutely nothing to do with us. It is not our beef at all. But we went out of the way to send our military assets, our aircraft to Saudi Arabia, a Sunni country, to help them prosecute this war against the Shia people in Yemen. Again, the only conclusion I can come to in that episode was for the optics, that we are helping our Sunni brothers, in the struggle to defend the faith and all that religion. It is to impress the local Muslim voters. That's it. Was it in our national interest? I don't think so. It was another attempt to benefit some political party or some political interest here, domestic audience. But at what cost? So this is where sometimes or more than once, our foreign policy has not served our interests well. I have a few other examples. Do you remember the famous attack against Lahad Datu by the Sulu people?
Oh yeah, from Southern Philippines.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a lot to that story that has not been told. The public doesn't know the full picture. Neither do I. But I have heard many things, and the Philippine press, especially the tabloid press at that time, they were all online. They were saying a lot of things. Of course, some of it could be conspiracy theories and things like that. But there was some issues about the people who came from the southern Philippines to invade Sabah, so to speak. It was not really an invasion. There was talk that because there are people from the Philippines who became beneficiaries of Project IC in Sabah.
Yes,
they were given citizenship so that they could vote for certain political parties at that time.
Yep.
So these people had not only they had dual citizenship because they were still moving here and there, because these are very people who live on the sea. They are maritime people and they have boats and they just travel around the islands there. So they had a foot in the southern Philippines and they had a foot in Sabah. In Sabah, they were given privileges because they were citizens and things like that. So it was in the interest of some politicians to get their votes. The Project IC was one of them. And there was talk at the time that some people, there were elections due around that time, and that some people in the southern Philippines, I mean the people from the Mindanao people who were in Sabah, they had been promised certain things, land, and opportunity to develop plantation, things like that, in return for support at the polls. so something went sour. Something went sour, and some people were upset. And it was one of the contributing factors to what happened. So again, this is a case where we did not know how to handle our neighbors. And, there's an ongoing sort of hostilities and insurgency in the southern Philippines until today.
Yeah, I mean, we all, I'm not sure what, just for the benefit of our viewers, if we should not forget the Abu Sayyaf
Exactly.
wing of the insurgency in southern Philippines.
And politicians.
Why the hell do we get involved in that?
Our politicians have been involved in this thing on the wrong side or in the wrong way for decades.
Yeah.
In those days, in a long time ago, in the 70s, there were serious accusations that the politicians in Sabah were actively involved in supporting these the Moros. At the time, they were called the Moros, the Southern Mindanao people, the Muslim insurgents who were fighting against the Philippine government, that they got substantial support in terms of money, weapons, training, and safe havens. They could always run to Sabah and disappear inside Sabah. So we were getting involved in issues in the southern Philippines, not to our national interests or for the benefit of the country, but for specific political interests. Because in Sabah, if you were a Sabah politician in that part of the world and you were seen to be helping the Moros, the people of the southern Mindanao, it was believed, or it was hoped, that they would get votes at the elections from the local people. It's as simple as that. So, of course, things backfired because there has never been real solid peace in the Philippines. It has settled down a bit more now, but it is not 100% peace. And then we have these flare-ups. Like, for example, the attack in Lahad Datu. That problem is not fully solved yet. So, because our politicians there and also our overall foreign policy towards that part of the world, perhaps he has not found a proper footing yet. I believe if we put our national interests first, what benefits us as a country, all of us, we may find a better resolution rather than leaving it to the politicians who are looking at fishing for votes by using things like this, problems like this. The other one is in Peninsula, our northern border with Thailand. There's another insurgency going on just across the border with the Muslim people who populate southern Thailand. They are called the Thai Malays because many of them speak Malay. And they have various organizations in southern Thailand which have problems with the center, with the Thai government. The PULO, the old PULO, the Patani Liberation Organization, named after the PLO. And then you have now the Barisan something, Patani, all these various groups, and they've had conflict with the Thai government, shooting conflict, bombings, assassinations, things like that. And for a while, for quite a long time, these people from southern Thailand, they had strong support in Malaysia. We helped them. They used to come here. They used to be given safe haven. They could stay here. They went to school here. They attended our universities. They were aided by our government. So again, this is all within ASEAN, where we are supposed to live in a zone of peace, freedom, and neutrality with our neighbors. And yet we were giving, basically closing one eye and providing safe haven for people who were fighting. There was an insurgency, in southern Thailand. So why? Again, the politicians are involved because if you go to the northern states, especially Kelantan, Perlis, Perak not so, but Kelantan and Perlis, yes, they have very close relations across the border. There are people in these parts of the country who have relations and who may also have dual citizenships and all that. Now all this has decreased, but at that time, I'm talking about decades ago, there was very close relationship. So what happened across the border affected people on this side of the border. And of course, election time, if you wanted their votes, you had to listen to their grievances. And so if their grievances were across the border with another country, another government, our boys also got involved. So you found that in those days, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, you find that funds were going from our northern states by the politicians. They were investing money in building mosques, and madrasas and religious schools across the border, because again, they were fishing for votes on this side of the border by providing welfare to people across the border. So, and that was also our policy at that time. We had sort of sympathy. It went beyond sympathy towards the Southern Thai situation, which did it help our national interest? I doubt it. It's debatable, but the politicians thought at that time that it was helping their interests in getting the Malay Muslim vote. So there is a conflict here between what is good for the country, what is good for General Motors and the US, what is good for the country, and what is good for the political interests in our foreign policy.
I look at Zaid. I look at comparisons in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, Singapore looks after its economic interests, and it states very bluntly about how, for example, it does not want their population, their Muslim population, Malay Muslim population, or whatever you want to call it over there, to be influenced by politics and events across the causeway, right? So what you see there is actually a leadership that is willing to go against an emotional appeal. I call appeal to things like religion, tribalism as emotional appeal, rather than pocket check.
EQ, isn't it? Is it emotional quotient?
Well, EQ is emotional
Quotient, isn't it?
yeah,
EQ.
something like that.
Instead
Yeah,
of IQ is EQ.
yeah. But you can have. I mean, EQ is also about understanding that what actually delivers for your people, which is their economic well-being, because at the end of the day, your people wants to ensure that their children have a better life than theirs. They want to be able to feed their family. They want to have a stability of where they know their next paycheck is going to come from. So they don't want to be. I mean, Singapore has shown that they say we do not want this kind of politics infecting our populace. So that's, to me, is leadership, right? Rather than appealing or fishing for votes, like what you just say, using this emotionalism of tribalism of religion. That's one thing, or even tribalism of regionality issues, right? So they've been very strategic about how they go about it. Even when I looked at American foreign policy is actually very simple if one looks at it. It is very much economic driven.
National interest.
National interest. National interest.
You cannot blame them.
Yeah, I don't. And I've been saying that for a long time. I mean, I want my prime minister, or if he was a president, to ensure that Malaysia is number one economically, right? So going back to that, then, to me, what I see from historical standpoint, we've got in from the early start of the country, and then we have Mahathir coming on board and trying to out-Islamize PAS, and then with that also, actually. Because of his colonial experience or post-colonial experience, right? It colors his judgment in terms of his anti-Western policy. It's not, to me, about... I've always looked at things and say, take what is good from a certain culture of a certain society and implement within ours, and don't wholesale reject things or wholesale accept things. And I think what we have done, and then subsequently, probably after Pak Lah became Prime Minister, then we really started shifting. Our education system already was shifting towards Islamism. But the minute Pak Lah become Prime Minister, then you've got this whole idea of, of sudden we see Bukit Bintang being a souk market.
Arab Street.
Yeah. And again, it comes to that. I'm wondering whether, and our people who actually are the ones that generates the SME incomes for our people to be working.
Yeah, this was
being displaced.
Since you mentioned Abdullah Badawi, our former late Prime Minister, he was one of those guys who, basically, they were short of ideas on how to go about, serving. So doing good for the country, and the foreign policy also reflected this lack of impetus, lack of ideas. Yes, it's true. During the time of Abdullah Badawi, they started introducing this Arab street things all over the place. Here, we had the souks. They set up Arab souks. They used the word souk. There was one in Putrajaya, and then you mentioned Bukit Bintang. How did it benefit us? I think that the at that time there were issues. These Arab tourists started coming here in numbers. They did, but more for the nightlife in Bukit Bintang. How did that benefit the rest of the country? By having this kind of Arab-centric kind of foreign policy and Arab-friendly and Islamic country-friendly, and then we had all these people coming here. The black money scams.
Yeah,
and then we had the drug smuggling people from the Middle East who came here. And very often we used to read in the press, the police will be arresting this fellow from this Middle Eastern country with so much drugs, and the black money scammers. All this came because of this tilt, our over friendliness towards this Arab and Islamic countries.
Northern Africa.
Arab and Islamic countries, again, to fish for the votes. We even named a road in KL, Jalan Isfahan. Have you heard of this name? Jalan Isfahan is off Jalan Tuanku Abdul Rahman. It's a short street. They even changed the name and declared like Kuala Lumpur a sister city with Isfahan. Isfahan is a city in Iran. To what benefit? All the people who did business or lived along that part of the Jalan Isfahan, which is a very short road, nevertheless, you had to change your address on the business card. You had to change your letterhead on your stationery. You had to change your address with your bank, because now it's called Jalan Isfahan. So imagine the difficulties and the extra expenses and the cost it burden the people with, just because somebody said, let's,
it's not their money.
It's not their money. Let's change the name of the road to reflect that we are close to our Islamic countries, our neighbors, our Islamic brothers. We put in the Jalan Isfahan, but you just put a burden on the ordinary people. They have to go and change their letterheads and change their business cards, go to the bank, fill up the form, change their address, because no more whatever name it was before. So this is short-sighted thinking. How does this serve the national interest? Today, when I ask you, do you know Jalan Isfahan?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Idea.
I don't even
Nobody
know.
knows.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So who does this benefit? These are just... I call it wild horse policy making. In Malay, it's kuda liar. Wild horse policy making. You don't think things through.
Yeah.
So this has been going on, and it doesn't really help them. Neither did it help them get the Muslim vote. because they lost the elections in
There you go.
2018.
Yes.
They don't realize that.
Yes.
It doesn't help you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Singapore, which you mentioned just now.
Yeah.
You see, Singapore has a very dynamic policy on Palestine now. You know the conflict going on in Gaza and all that. We have announced hundreds of millions of ringgit in aid. I think this is debatable. Is it 100 million?
Oh no, I heard the
million?
last I heard was 200 to 300 million.
200 or is it 300? Because
Yeah, I'm always asking whether it was.
I remember announcements were made about at least 3 times, and each announcement is 100 million.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere there.
Yeah.
100, 200, 300. Okay, fine. Regardless of how many 100 million.
Yeah.
This has been earmarked for Gaza, the Hamas people who are in Gaza. What about the majority of Palestinians who live in the West Bank? You know, under the Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, are they getting any funds from us? Are we helping them? It seems to be that we are focused on Gaza. Of course, Gaza has got the hostilities, the problems are in Gaza. But do we have a program to help the Palestinians in the West Bank? So there seems to be a dichotomy here, and there's politics behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the part of Palestine in the West Bank doesn't agree with the part of the Palestine in Gaza. Their politics are different. One part is very hostile and has embarked on this militant approach. The other part they've decided to be not to engage in hostilities, so they are relatively more peaceful. But whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
we have chosen to focus on Gaza, and we are promising money and this and that. I do not know if the funds have reached there. But when you mentioned Singapore just now, Singapore, they have actually established a field hospital to help the people in Gaza, those who are affected by the conflict. Singapore apparently runs a military hospital, but they are doing it through Egypt. They have cooperated with Egypt because, the borders are closed. I believe they have set up their military, their field hospital on the Egyptian side, and they cooperate with the Egyptian government to treat people who are injured in the conflict. So they have a physical presence there. So they are there on the ground and personally involved, which also helps them with the Islamic vote in Singapore, which shows that the Singapore government is doing things on the ground to help the Palestinian issue. They are directly involved, and they are making sure that they are helping the Palestinians who need help. And Singapore is doing this, of course. It is to help the Palestinians, it is to aid them, but it is also in their national interest, because it paints a good picture of Singapore with a lot of countries, a lot of Islamic countries around the world, because they're not really taking sides or showing bias. They're just doing pure humanitarian work. Hospital.
There's no religious connotation to what they are doing.
And few people know about this. I heard about this from a friend of mine who's a former diplomat. So they do things quietly without any hoo-ha or attracting attention. They just go in and get the job done. Even not all Singaporeans may be aware of this. So they are doing this purely to help people in need. And of course, when you help others, it always comes back, and you get some good returns in your benefit in the long run. So that's how the Singaporeans are doing it.
Let me circle back to on that issue to a certain extent. Here goes back to me and my economics for the people motivation at all times when I look at any policy issues, including foreign policy, right? You're looking at Gaza or even West Bank. We're looking at about 7,500 kilometers, 7,800 kilometers away. I've never seen it. I don't care. Okay, 200 million. Let's say the number is 200 million that we gave away for so-called humanitarian. I don't know how it gets delivered. Okay, usually even in America, from what I know, anytime an NGO or politics is involved, there's always a skimming of the money. Okay, we don't know. I don't know. Okay, but I know it's been very clearly seen actually, even with US aid, how much the Democrats were skimming money out of US aid. So that's one thing. But here's the thing that I want to point out with respect to Singapore. Singapore per capita GDP is approximately 89 or 90,000 US dollars per annum. Their GDP is almost equal, GDP per capita is almost equal to Americans. Okay? So that's a very, very developed nation, rich nation, and they can afford to actually do a little bit of more charity to outsiders. Okay? We've just announced that, or we know, and I've read recently that our tax refunds coming from the government is staggered.
Yeah,
okay, within a period of about 4 years, I believe.
4 years. 4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
And the first payment is like 5%.
Yeah.
Imagine if you do that to your creditor, if you're running a business. You and I run businesses. Okay? I think my creditor will sue me to hell. You know? If you and imagine if you are slow in paying your taxes, what's going to happen to you? You know? So here we are. Okay, I called it, the Malays have a very nice proverb for this. It's called menyusu kera di hutan. Okay, for my international or English speaking audience, it's called, giving your tits milk to the monkey in the forest, and ignoring your baby that's on your lap. Okay, this is basically what has been happening, and I'm so pissed off about it. I'm truly, truly pissed off about it.
Yes, but we can afford to give 200 million or 300 million.
But we can't afford to pay back debt to our own citizens. That is not the government's money.
We can afford to pay money to the Gazans.
Talk about that.
On that note, what you said.
Hey, we brought in some Gazans, eh?
Yes, remember, we brought in about 200 people from Gaza here. We flew them in for treatment and things and like that. It didn't work out very well because after a while, those people didn't like being here. And from what I hear, they have all gone. They have left the country. They have left Malaysia.
So where did they go?
They didn't like being cooped up in wherever place that they were kept, because I think they were not free to move around as much as they wanted to. So some of them protested, and it was reported in the media. Yeah. They were burning, creating some small fires and creating a ruckus because they were protesting the conditions that they were kept in here. But they were kept in a very nice place. It was to me, it looked like 5-star accommodation. But then again, they were not happy. So from what I hear, they have left the country. They may have gone to various places. I heard some of them have even gone back to Gaza. So that didn't work out too well. This is where, when I mentioned Singapore, they have done a better job, in my view, because the idea was the same, to help people who needed medical attention. They flew in the 200 people from Gaza, mostly for medical attention, but many of them were not injured or in need of. From when we looked at them,
I saw the photos.
Yeah, especially those kids who were creating the fires. They were burning boxes and things like that. They looked like regular people, and they were not.
They look pretty well fed to me.
They were not injured or sickly or anything. But anyway, this is where the Singaporean model it has worked better. They set up a field hospital over there, because that is right. You mentioned 7,800 kilometers. The Singaporeans have set up a field hospital right beside Gaza, on the Egyptian side, I think, where people just come across the Rafah crossing or whatever, and they get medical treatment. So that's a better thing to do. Is you don't have to move them from there to here and then put them up in some building, although it's a 5-star, and then they don't like it, and they start misbehaving, and they finally they left the country. So that was to me that policy was quite disastrous. But again, why was it done?
Yeah.
Remember the publicity when those 200 people
Oh,
arrived
yeah.
in Malaysia? It was blasted in our TV. I think day and night. There was this one lady carrying a huge, expensive handbag, put on a stretcher, and all those things. But it was for the optics. It was for the optics, and the sound bites, basically fishing for the Malay Muslim vote here. That we are doing this for Gaza and for Palestine. We are defending, religion, Islam, and things like that. But it didn't serve our interests at the end of the day. All those 200 people left, and it created a ruckus. It was negative publicity. Versus the Singaporean guys who went over there and set up a hospital and helped the people there quietly with no fuss. So this is another case of where the question you asked at the beginning: do we have a foreign policy? What is our foreign policy? Who does our foreign policy serve? That's what we're discussing today. Who does our foreign policy serve? Does it serve our national interest? Does it serve your interest and my interest as individual citizens of the country, or is it designed to benefit the politicians? To fish for votes, the Muslim vote. This is where we,
and even that I think is quite is more than debatable, because as you well said, they've been losing every election and eroding their own.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help.
It does not help at all.
Yeah.
But I can assure you, the PAP in Singapore will win the next elections because they do real things.
Yeah.
They do things that are what is right and good. What is right may not necessarily be good. Like sometimes you have to discipline your kids. It may not be good, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But in Singapore, they do things that are right and which also ultimately turn out to be good. So that is a focus which they have, which we seem to lack. So, but if our boys can focus on the national interests, what is good for the country as a whole, what is good for our economy, which you said, there's a higher chance of crafting foreign policy that is beneficial to everybody. And eventually, that will translate into votes for the politicians. But somehow, our political boys, the boys are like, they cannot connect the dots.
Why don't we, talking about connecting the dots then, I think is a good segue, right? Then to talk about how would we be looking at foreign policy? Because if we really think about it, the foreign policy is part and parcel of, as I said, economic policy, and it has to actually gel together. So that whatever you do on a certain part is going to benefit the other part, which is going to deliver to the people, right? So, but the thing is, we are doing like a hodgepodge of things at the whim of political expediency to fish boats. So what we need to see happening is actually a clear outline of strategy. This is our foreign policy. The objective is such. This is the vision. This is how we are going to implement. Like any companies that we run or corporations that we build, there is a vision, a mission, and this is the plan, right? So you have an overarching concept, and then an implementation plan, and therefore, hence the results. Okay? So that being the case, maybe, we should, our policymakers should lead on how does it benefit our economy in whatever that we do. That I would propose to be our charter as far as foreign policy is concerned.
Forget
Forget about all these other things.
Yes. And then you see, it depends. It all hinges on, there are 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the government and whoever is in charge of making policy, especially foreign policy. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. We work 9 to 5. That's an 8-hour day, isn't it? You only have so many hours in a day to work. So you must make sure that the time that we spend in crafting foreign policy, in sending ambassadors all over the world, opening up embassies, maintaining them at such high cost, you only have so many hours in a day to do things that are useful to the country, to the economy. If you are going to focus our foreign policy based on those tribal issues you mentioned, for example, the religious identity, we will support Islamic countries based on religion and issues, because that purportedly seems to sell well with the local Muslim voters, and the fishing for votes part that you mentioned also. Does that benefit us? We are spending our resources, the time, money, energy of, let's say, of all our diplomatic staff overseas in countries which do not generate as much trade for us. Why don't we focus our foreign policy on those countries with whom we have large trade relationship, and try to spend that money in all the diplomatic staff and the embassies that we have overseas, and our foreign ministry staff here, in leveraging on that relationship with our major trade partners, so that we increase the trade between our countries. That should be the focus. If there are countries that are major foreign investors, in our country and around the world, how do we get them to more of them to come in here? So that would be a better focus that will serve our interests better than basing our foreign policy on tribal issues.
I would even
religious identity.
Yeah, I mean, to expound on that, I would even say it needs a complete overhaul. It's almost like what we are running is a car that is basically a 1950 car that should actually be retired. And put in not even in a museum, just put it in a scrapyard lah.
And
right.
And if I may finish the point, and it has real repercussions, because recently the Indians, there was a clash, there was a 4-day war between Pakistan and India.
Yeah,
that clash happened for less than 4 days. So the Indians, they made an effort to go around the world. They went to a few countries, and they also came here to explain what happened. And obviously they were looking for sympathy. Okay, that was a clash between India and Pakistan. As you said, Palestine is 7,800 kilometers. India, Pakistan is about maybe half the distance. But it's still far away from us.
Still far away. Yeah.
But the Indians complain. I tune into what this Indian talking heads like us say in the social media, and their analysts were saying that they found Malaysia to be not sympathetic towards India in this conflict. That means Malaysia took an attitude where we were more on the side of Pakistan, in the sense that more sympathetic. All right. So the Indians said that Malaysia was not too keen to listen to the Indians trying to give their side of the story. So now, this is all arguable, debatable. But first of all, why do we get involved in a conflict that has nothing to do with us, or even take sides, or even show sympathies either to this side or that side? It's something between other people thousands of kilometers away. But obviously, in this issue, we are on the Pakistan. We have sympathies, or some of the people here have sympathies towards Pakistan, again, because of the tribal issues. There's a religious issue. So the merits of the case seems to take a back seat. What is more important is the religious identity. Now, here you can debate who was on the right, who was on the wrong. You can debate,
Yep.
But to immediately make up your mind and take one side sit on one side of the fence, it doesn't really serve our interests too well. And don't forget, India is a major trading partner with Malaysia. They buy a lot of things from us. They buy our oil palm. They buy a lot of products from us, as well as they sell some things too, but they buy a lot from us, and we have a long relationship with India. So why antagonize? To me, if you ask me, the easiest option is maintain a balanced position, neutral. Remember ZOPFAN, Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality, the last letter and neutrality. We just take a neutral stance. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but, thank you very much. And that's it, and we don't take any sides. That, to me, would be a better option. But the Indians felt that they felt like there was a slight bias against them. So it is their perception, but these perceptions do not help us as much. So again, a foreign policy should be focused on serving our national interest. Forget about all this South. We will stand by the South at all costs. We will stand by the Muslim countries at all costs. We will stand by the Arab countries at all costs. It's risky. It's risky because you do not know what are the merits of each case. Just because a country belongs to an organization where you are also a member, therefore it makes them right. That is totally wrong. So the best option is, if you're not sure, pick on the letter N in ZOPFAN, neutrality. Just be neutral. Don't poke our noses where it doesn't belong. Serve our national interests first. So this is something that the local boys, they're a little bit thick in the head.
In corporate leadership, what we do, even as a parent, when your children fight, and you're not sure whose story you want to believe, what you do is actually you lend a sympathetic ear to each party. Yeah. As sincere as you can make it, so that they feel that you are listening to them.
Impartial listener.
That's right. You don't, just the act of actually having empathy is more than sufficient in most cases, especially when you're talking of a place far, far away in a land,
which has nothing to do with us.
Right? I mean, economically, we export about 11 billion. I was just checking quickly just now, $11 billion worth of goods to India. America, we export about 43, 44, 45 billion annually to the US.
US dollars?
In US dollar.
US dollars. That's a lot.
Right? For China, we export approximately the same or slightly higher to China. So you're talking about two elephants that are now looking after their personal national interests, that we have to be able to dance a nice dance to ensure that we come out on top in either way the chess game happens, right? So to me, I want to talk about what we should be doing now. I've already said, maybe, I think if we can move it a bit to say, I've already said I want to chuck away that particular 1950 car that we have been driving, that is clunking and getting us nowhere, and we need to replace it with a brand new 21st century car, that is probably driverless, So
it's called the national policy car.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, national interest.
National
interest, not the national car.
Yeah.
That was a disaster.
Exactly.
The national interest.
And you bring all these issues, which is your economic interest, into your national policy of foreign interests that you have to demonstrate and actually execute. All right. So if you go at that and you understand the dynamics of what your exports are, okay, you've already got through the US is recalibrating what they consider. I was on another podcast just recently, and I said this: what we are seeing is a recalibration of what a non-free trade globalization has been. Okay, you've got to be able to adapt to it instead of blaming others. All right. China has got their own national interest to look after. Why did they do the BRICS? They did the BRICS because why? They need to export their production. Their production capacity is 30% of world production capacity. They don't consume. Okay? And their people don't have jobs if they don't do this. Now, we have a challenge then because we are exporting a lot to them, right? What if they come and export their businesses and take over basically the SME sector and our industry completely? Our people has got no jobs. You know, I just went for coffee. There's a friend of mine brought me to another coffee downstairs. Okay. And they only had 2 workers. Everything is done on app. It's a China company. Okay. So that's just giving an example.
Well, the multinationals, the MNCs, which were most of them were from the West and also Japanese, they have been here for decades now, since the 1960s and 70s. They basically, the large manufacturing corporates in the country for decades have been MNC driven until today. MNC driven. In fact, you know, our largest manufacturing exports are electronics, and I think almost all the electronics exports are done by MNCs.
MNC, yeah.
So they have contributed significantly to our GDP and also created massive employment opportunities. And over the years, their local supply chain has expanded. For example, the electronics industry in Penang has a very strong supply chain in Penang and in Malaysia, where a lot of components are now made here. So there is trickle down the vertical integration inside the country. These things take time, but to me, in my view, technology is progress, and the human race, at every time they progress, it creates more opportunities, more wealth. You know, from pushing a horse cart, we made automobiles and, you know, internal combustion engine, and then, you know, we're EV. So at every stage of the technological progress of the human race, it creates more opportunities, more wealth, more jobs. So personally, I'm not afraid of technological advancement. It will create more opportunities. So if that guy is operating his shop with just 2 people and you using apps, the 4 guys who lost their job, they will find a niche somewhere, and they will maybe borrow that same app and do other things. So technology to me is a good thing. Of course, in anything there is a transition period. During the transition period, there will be people who will fall through the cracks and this and that. But ultimately, technology will generate more opportunities and more wealth. Otherwise, no point inventing the wheel. You might as well.
But what my point actually is, I agree with you completely with respect to technology. I'm never afraid of technological change because I think that humanity will adapt. That has been the core upward mobility of civilization, right? The thing that the point that I want to make with respect to foreign policy is that there are challenges in all that is happening with respect to our trading partners, and that's the core point of where your policy making between economic policy and foreign policy, okay?
And local political interests.
Which is for the people.
Political expediency.
Right?
Not of the politicians. I'm referring to the politicians.
That's the one that I want to junk out.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's
right?
the problem.
So what basically you and I always advocate seems to be is actually, stop this political think. Start looking at what our people need, and our people need to start thinking the way hopefully what we are saying, the way we are thinking, which is actually look at what is good for our wallets.
For the country, for the people.
Yeah. So that
Exactly.
actually you have a better life, your children have a better life, and then we move ahead in such a competitive world. Instead of look at this very clearly, just on this almost tribal, ask no question, as long as they are your kind of Muslim.
That doesn't work. It's detrimental.
Is that
It's detrimental.
your word on that? I'm gonna hook on that word, which is the detrimental part of it. The US has already branded Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization.
Exactly.
Okay. Think about it in this way. Iranian oil is sanctioned. Russian oil is sanctioned. Okay? That has an impact. That is a pure direct economic impact. This one,
Muslim Brotherhood sanction.
Can
it affect us?
It will affect us.
Exactly.
Yeah?
These are risks.
It's already going to affect us.
So what do we get? What benefit do we get? For example, if you want to stick our necks out, for example, for the Muslim Brotherhood, what do we get? You are assuming a risk.
Yeah.
Which with little or no return. There is no return on this, taking this kind of risk.
There's no return.
But actually you're putting yourself at very high risk. You can suffer consequences, So this is where I say that sometimes they're not thinking right. This tribal identity really has clouded the vision a lot. It costs us, especially when the US is a giant. They are a superpower. They are the largest economy in the world. They are a huge elephant. They are gigantor.
They're not going to go away even if China competes and outpaces them, they will be the two giants that we have to deal with the next century.
If they decide to flick their tail to chase away the flies, I hope we are not one of those flies, We may get swatted just because they flick their tail. So we have to, our local boys have to think a bit carefully. I want to say a little bit about how they go about making or implementing foreign policy in Malaysia,
right?
Which also is often disjointed. Like in other countries, like in the US, it's foreign relations. So, for example, here in our country, this is what I gathered. We have this thing called visa on arrival, VOA.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these mostly third world countries and African countries. They are given this VOA facilities. That means people from those countries can come here and they enter Malaysia and they apply for the visa when they arrive here at the airport. This has created a lot of issues in this country. Not the least of it is corruption issues, because they have been reported in the media that immigration officers have been arrested for corruption, and an immigration officer does not sell groceries, or it doesn't sell souvenirs at the immigration entry points. They issue visas and they stamp the passports. So if the corruption is involved, that is a type of involvement. So which is complicated by this visa on arrival policy that we have. Many countries around the world have VOAs. It's not unique to Malaysia, but for some reason, our country, because of our welcoming, people from the South cooperation, from Islamic countries, from the North African countries, you find that a lot of people from these countries do come here, and they get in based on the visa on arrival. And Donald Trump had a name for these countries, which I don't want to mention here. So that has caused many issues, because people who come here on VOA, they have ended up, it has transpired, they overstay, they get involved in undesirable activities and all kinds of things, So, but the thing is, the visa on arrival is something that is pushed by the Ministry of Tourism. It is not under Ministry of Foreign Affairs. it is tourism that pushes for VOA, because it also brings in a lot of tourists from other countries like China, for example, and India, who do spend a lot of money in this country. Tourism is a highly lucrative business for our country and a significant chunk of change for our GDP. So you cannot have VOA only for this country because I like them, and we don't want to allow VOA from other countries. It has to be generic across the board, which I don't agree with. I think we have to scrutinize our VOA, and we can put restrictions. We are a free country, sovereign country. We can do whatever we want inside our country to safeguard our national interests. So if we think that certain regions of the world, certain parts of the world are problematic, restrict them. Put extraordinarily high fees on the visa so that only those who are above a certain caliber can enter the country. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry, or not every other person from those countries. I don't know what names to use. So we have to control this. There are other ways of doing this. The British have now imposed some kind of a visa on Malaysians, on a lot of Commonwealth countries. You have to apply for an online visa, an e-visa. You have to apply for a visa online.
Do we for Malaysia?
Yes,
I haven't gone to UK for a long time.
There's a recent announcement, but this is a good idea. Instead of giving VOA. By the way, these points were given to me by my good friend Mr. Norman Fernandez from Johor. He's a well-known commentator. If you do this e-visas, online visas, so they don't come here and ask for the visa at the airport, which creates a lot of other issues. They have to apply for the visa online in their countries. So payments are made online. So there's less chance for this, other behavior that we don't like, any corruption and all that. It gets rid of that risk. They apply online and they make payments online, and then the visa is issued online before they board the flight in their countries. You see, so we have to do that. So that solves a lot of problems. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's the mod. That is very much what happens with Australia. You apply online,
Yes.
and then you get the visa.
Yeah.
Online is not even in your passport. And you just go and take your flight.
I think that will solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
The other thing is, to avoid this problem of all kinds of weird characters entering the country and creating problems later, or they come here and they get stuck at the airport, because other countries do this. We have to oblige the airline that brings in such people to take them back. You see, now when a fellow comes in from some strange country and his travel documents are not in order, or there's some issues, whatever, he immediately comes under the care of our immigration authorities. And they might, if he's detained, then they must feed him and provide a place for him to sleep and all that. They usually go to that. The immigration has got a few centers where they keep people like this, travelers who have problems with their travel documents, you see. We should not do that. We should put the focus on the airline that flew them in to take them back. Because there is a duty on the airline when they sell the ticket and before the passenger boards their flight to check whether all their documents are in order, travel documents. Because, when you check in at any airport around the world, they check your passport to make sure that you have at least 6 months. The airline companies do that.
Yeah.
Because I've been told that before. When I was traveling back from the US, the guy looked at my passport and said, you're almost approaching your 6 months limit. I mean, this is an airline official, meaning that there's a responsibility on that airline. This was in San Francisco, for the guy to make sure that the traveler who's boarding their plane has got valid travel documents, you see. So we should make it the responsibility of the airlines who fly these people here. If they get caught here, they get stuck here for whatever infringement of travel documents, that airline is to fly them back. Why should we waste our money to house them and then finally to deport them? So we should put the responsibility on the airlines to take back these people who have faulty travel documents or no travel documents.
I'm going to take it even one step further, if you ask me, actually. I think we underestimate the attractiveness of Malaysia as a investment as an investment destination
It's very attractive.
and tourist destination,
Extremely attractive.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the only reasons that we lacked or we are behind is more because of our own foreign policy. Not just our own foreign policy, but our own economic.
We mess things up.
Yeah. But if you look at the fundamentals of the nation, the people, the culture, the society,
The food.
we are safe. We are, our people are very welcoming. We are stable. Our people are not the kind that want to have a fight, over stupid things, right? And we have actually, among all the Commonwealth countries and even the non-Commonwealth countries within the ASEAN region, we are one of the most successful, probably equivalent or, of the only two, I would say, if any foreign partners of mine talk about, I said, our rule of law is very good, right? Which is very important, okay? So, when you have that premium as a destination, you should actually, I wouldn't even do a visa on arrival at all. I would abolish visa on arrival. And actually, I would even take the position like the United States, which is basically, if you come from that kind of place that Trump calls it, okay, I may not even accept you. I would have my embassy really vet out, as you rightly put, e-visa. Okay?
Yeah, you apply for the e-visa online before you leave your country.
And if you look at it, if that's your trading partner, that has no problem. Okay? There has no problem in terms of their propensity of their population to abuse and overstay. I wouldn't even I would do away with a visa requirement.
No, less black money scammers, drug smugglers.
Exactly. Right? So then you have...
Or religious extremists.
Correct.
They also turned up here.
Correct.
From some countries.
This is one concern that that I have with our foreign policy, is that Malaysia, because of the welcoming nature of our society, we become a staging point for terrorists.
It has happened.
It has.
Then our police boys went around arresting. Remember, there were a few years back, they arrested this group of ISIS or Al Qaeda fellas in the north. And it became a police issue because these people come in on VOA, visa on arrival, and then they disappear into the countryside, and then they end up here and there. And these guys were living off taxpayers' money because they were living in somewhere which was funded by the taxpayer. And then at last the police went in and arrested them and I think had them deported. So we just bring all this crap on our shoulders for no reason.
Say, let's be very frank. I mean, it is public knowledge. It is, that the 9/11 attackers staging area was here.
Yeah, they had a meeting in KL, the famous meeting in Kuala Lumpur.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly ashamed.
So we don't want to. So our policemen have said that no, we are not a base for terrorists, international terrorists. No, we are not a base. But they certainly like to pass through our country.
Yeah.
So many of them.
Yeah.
They like to pass through our country. They like to come here for their meetings and planning sessions.
Before long, our passport no longer becomes one of the most valuable passport in the world. Which we are still. I don't have any problem going anywhere.
I just like to say a few more things on this issue of foreign relations, foreign policy. Just now I was talking about the Ministry of Tourism, which is the push factor behind the visa on arrival idea. For good reasons, they want tourist arrivals. So to them, the visa on arrival helps with tourism arrivals in the country, VOA. But here's the situation. The point I'm trying to make is that this is not driven by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is more in the hands of the Ministry of Tourism. There is another part also of, I call it foreign relations. MITI, our Minister of International Trade and Industry. Now, recently, remember when Donald Trump was here and signed the trade deal with Malaysia, I have not commented much on the trade deal because there are a lot of pros and cons about it. But one of the things was the import of vehicles from America, especially electric vehicles. Now we have unlimited. There are no quotas on the import of electric vehicles from the US, and I think the import duties have been abolished. So you can bring in Tesla at whatever is Tesla's price. But again, this thing was driven by MITI. It is foreign policy. It is trade policy with America, but this thing was driven by Ministry of International Trade Industry. Ministry of Foreign Affairs had nothing to do with it, of course, because they are not the content experts on motor vehicle imports and exports. But nevertheless, it has an effect on our trade policy, our trade relations with other countries, with other, for example, China, and trade relations are also foreign policy. So when this thing happened, the Chinese registered a protest because Chinese cars are not exempted. Chinese EVs are not exempted from this reduction in tariffs, which was given to American cars under our recent trade policy with the US. So when the Chinese protested, they voiced their concern. They called the Malaysian ambassador to China in Beijing and gave him a piece of their mind. But the Malaysian ambassador is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's not MITI. So he just listened to what they had to say, and I suppose he came back and filed a report to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't know what Ministry of Foreign Affairs did. Maybe they pass it higher up. We do not know. But just like the VOA is pushed by the Ministry of Tourism, you find issues like duties and tariffs on imported EVs, American EVs, was pushed by the Ministry of International Trade. So Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not involved. Other countries, that's not the case. In the US, for example, the State Department is the final say on anything and everything to do with foreign relations. The moment the United States has talks about anything with another country, at some point in time, there is a bottleneck. That bottleneck is the State Department, their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It has to go through the State Department. The Chinese ambassador in Malaysia handles anything and everything between Malaysia and Beijing. If Beijing has some policy decision which has got to do with Malaysia, they do not speak to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They speak to their ambassador here. Their ambassador speaks to our government. When we say something or anything to do with China or whatever to do with Chinese issues, the Chinese ambassador in KL, he will gather or accumulate all the information, whatever has happened, and then he will pass that to his government in Beijing. So both ways, the bottleneck, the guy in charge is the Chinese ambassador in Malaysia. In this way, US State Department and the Chinese, their foreign policy is very coherent because it goes through a one-stop center, either State Department for the US or the Chinese ambassador here in KL. So the Chinese ambassador here in KL is actually the Chinese foreign center for Chinese foreign policy both ways. So this is where, so they are more coordinated. There is less.
That's the word.
That's the word. They are coordinated. There is less working at cross purposes. So here we have an issue because Ministry of Tourism pushes the visa on arrival. Do you remember the famous case where the Minister of Tourism, our Mr. Tiong Sing King, is it? He was called to the KL International Airport because of some issues. Some tourists were held up and there was a shouting match and things like that. There was a famous shouting match, between him and the immigration officials and all that. So things like this happen, which is not good press. Because we have this rather disjointed where the foreign policies, or things that affect our foreign relations are in the hands of not just Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also other ministries. So it's not as well coordinated. This is where I think we need more coordination. You have to centralize this to be more efficient. So because all this at the end of the day affects our foreign relations with other countries. It's policy making, but we have to streamline this. We have to pay closer attention to this. This is something which the local boys.
Well, that goes back to
It's not a priority.
no. That goes back to leadership having an overarching strategy, because then what you do is actually you place all the silos of different ministerial function that will operate in coordination with each other and know how to consultatively ensure that once it goes out, it has already been discussed and every aspect has and also it's
that
not
everybody's on the same page,
everybody is on the same page, and not just that, it's also the efficiency of that particular decision making.
It's our image,
right? So if the bottlenecks become a bottleneck where you cannot get anything done, that's a different problem altogether as well. So you have to have both a comprehensive strategy and an efficient way of decision making for that strategy to be rolled out. So this is, I think, yeah. You want to add anything else, Syed? It's
no, I think we've covered
quite an extensive bit.
Yeah, quite a bit. So the bottom line is foreign policy. It must serve our national interests. My view is this part has been lacking in our country, the foreign policies of this country, especially the post-Mahathir era, the last 20 over years. Dr. Mahathir retired in 2003. Last over 20 years, we have, well, it started during Dr. Mahathir too. We have skewed ourselves too much towards this religious and regional identity. Regional identity meaning the Islamic identity. We tend to identify too much with countries, OIC countries and things like that, which is not a bad thing, but not to the detriment of really more pertinent issues and relationships that are more profitable to us vis-a-vis countries and societies that benefit us more, especially in terms of trade, investment, education and things like that. So we seem to have lost a bit of that focus. And lately, we are more on this, what you call the tribal identity, and especially religious identity. We promote tourism to the Middle East countries and we try to get two-way tourism. But the tourism from the Middle East countries is not as lucrative as from other countries in Asia and Europe.
Say, the thing is this about that, and I just want to add a small bit I forgot to say just now, which is actually when you talk about tourism, you want high quality tourism with high spending power.
High spending power.
Right? What we are getting is actually low spending power. And that with low spending power also, that imports actually problems with actually people who are coming here to actually make money out of our population,
to extract from us rather than to contribute.
Correct. So
I would rather build a German street or Europe street somewhere instead of a souk.
and this is the thing that I think what people don't realize, why when I talk about the changes that Trump is making in America is earth shattering in terms of revolutionizing and turning around the American economic policy and the whole concept of it, right? Which is, if you look at his first trip outside of America, where did he go? He went to Saudi Arabia, right? He went to UAE, right? Comparatively, the other presidents, you would either be looking at them landing in London or in Jerusalem, or Tel Aviv, or Brussels. Okay? Not Trump. Because why? He does understand that he needs the oil money in order to resuscitate investments into America. So, this tells you already the kind of thinking that is severely needed in. He's not looking at it, oh, that's an Islamic country. We are a Christian majority country. He doesn't care.
Like the famous Colonel Custer, lah. You ride where the battle is. That's the battlefront. That's where you go.
Yeah. So,
Simple.
I guess on that note, let's call it a wrap. Thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to us. Hopefully, we add to the conversation. Put in your comments, subscribe if you've not done it. More than 90% of our viewers are not subscribed. But I want to thank everybody. We have reached a lot more than 1,000 subscribers now within this short period of 6 months or so that the podcast has been on. And we are very thankful for that. That's it.
Thank you.
So thank you again, Syed. Thank you, all our viewers. Hope to see you again.
Thank you.